Okay, so before I start, raise your hand if you've never used OLDC to do anything before. Delaware. Yeah, Delaware. It's okay, you're new. Okay, so this is going to be a little over your head. This is not an introductory PowerPoint. All of our grantees have been using OLDC since the beginning of fiscal year 14, so this is not going to tell you how to use the system. And we have a separate PowerPoint about that, and if you find me later and let me know your contact information, I can send that to you. So apologies in advance. But what we are going to talk about is the new model plan in OLDC. So who here is responsible for developing and submitting the model plan every year? Okay, so most of you. Great. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what's new as an overview with the model plan. And then we're going to get into a few specifics with and describe some of the content changes that we have proposed, some of the formatting changes, and some of the new features in OLDC. We are testing the limits of OLDC with the model plan. I'm making the programmers do things they haven't done before. They tend not to like that. So we are a little bit of a guinea pig group for them because I am demanding that they make this perfect. And we're getting there, we're getting there. So, starting for fiscal year 15 plan, the one you submit on September 1st, the model plan is going to be its own separate form in OLDC. So there's no more PDF documents or Word documents. You don't have to attach anything to the household report. There aren't going to be problems with having attachments that are too big and having to attach like 7 different sections of the plan separately. And there's going to be no more abbreviated plan. I know, you're moaning. Because you like the abbreviated plan, because it's less work. And I get that, I understand. But you're going to like this, I promise. So who remembers my OLDC presentation in San Diego? So I kept saying that you're going to love it. You're loving it, right? Great. So you're going to love this even more than you've been loving all of OLDC before. And if you don't, you're not allowed to tell me. Okay, so in fiscal year 15, all grantees are going to be submitting a detailed plan. Regardless of whether or not you submitted a detailed plan last year, regardless of whether or not you like submitting the detailed plan every other year as opposed to every 3, everybody, all states, all tribes, everyone's doing a detailed model plan in OLDC. But the good news about that is that everything you put in for the 15 plan will, for the 16 plan, get automatically repopulated in your next year's form. So when you go and open the 16 plan, a million years from now, you're going to see everything you put in the year before, and all you'll have to do is make updates to whatever it is that you want to change. So really, it's like having an abbreviated plan every year after 15. I'm good at that. So it's really much better for you, trust me. On the other hand, that means your bosses probably have to read the full detailed plan every year, which I know is a pain. It means you have to do a public hearing on the full detailed plan every year, and it means you have to print out a much longer thing every year. But really, it's going to be less work. I promise. So, content changes. One of the biggest content changes is that the program integrity assessment is now going to be incorporated into the plan. There's not going to be a separate form for the PIAS. You are never going to see that Word document with the columns and the boxes and not knowing what to write because the questions are really vague and hoping that we like what you say and that we don't email you back. All of that is done. So we've reworded the questions and reformatted them, but we haven't really changed the content of the questions. They're now going to be a section in the plan. So you'll see it kind of interspersed. You'll see questions that you may recognize. But the formatting of the questions will look different, and I'll show you what I mean in a little bit about that. Other content changes. We added some questions. So we added questions on a variety of topics. Some of them are listed up here. We added questions on nominal payments to SNAP households, since that's getting so popular. Kind of want to know about it without having to call each of you and ask. I did this 2 years ago. I called like 20 of you and bothered you about this. We added questions about things like the definition of income for your state or tribe. We added questions on specifically how you define life-threatening crisis. I think right now in the plan we have a question that says, how do you define crisis? And so when we asked that question, what we meant when we wrote the plan originally is to get an answer on crisis and life-threatening crisis. But if you don't ask the question specifically, no one can read your mind. So we're adding questions to specifically get at the things we want to know about how your LIHEAP program is run. And I know, again, I can hear you guys in your brains. I know no one's excited about more questions. It makes the plan longer. But it's really much better this way, because what happens is our office constantly gets information requests. And so, for example, we'll get something like, OCS, a congressperson wants to know how many states include SNAP benefits as income when they make people eligible for LIHEAP. Well, that's not in the plan. So the only way we know the answer to this question is by calling all 50 of you, or in some cases all 200 of you when we need to know things from states and tribes. That's not fun for anybody. We have to bother you. You have to go look up your definition of income. So instead of doing all that now, we're just going to run queries on data we're already getting from you. So you're doing a little bit more work on the front end, but later on that means we'll have the information we need and we won't have to bug you about it later. So I think that will make everybody happier. We'll still bug you. Like, I'm not going to say we're never going to call you up again. We'll talk all the time. But I'm hoping we'll reduce the data requests significantly. So the plan looks a little different in OLDC than most of the forms you've seen before. And that is because it's a really long form, and we don't want you to scroll into infinity. Scroll down to answer all the questions. So the way the form looks like when you first get into it, when you hit New, Edit, Revise, hit Next, blue button, you're going to get this screen. And so what we did was we broke up the plan into sections. And the good thing about sections is if you have more than one person on your LIHEAP staff, not me so much, other people, you can have multiple people working on different sections at the same time. So for example, if you send money to a different state agency for weatherization, you can give them a username and password into OLDC, give them, data entry permission so they can add information but not submit or anything, and have them scroll down to the weatherization section and just fill that out for you. You can edit each section at any time. If you decide that everything in the section is wrong, you're redoing the whole thing, you can clear the section. You can finish one, you can skip around. And I think there's like 17 or 18 sections, but don't freak out because some of the sections are like one question long. So the initial couple are a little daunting. They're kind of longer, maybe like 8 or 10 questions per section, but as you get through the form, toward like the middle to end of it, the sections become much more manageable. There's some where you don't even have to scroll. It's really great. You're like, oh, one question, next, done. So formatting changes. As a rule, what we tried to do was get rid of open-ended questions and make things a little bit more Boolean, yes or no, check boxes. So Generally speaking, for most of the questions that you're going to see in there, it's going to be a question. They're going to look similar to what they looked like before, but then instead of just an open kind of field where you can type whatever you want, there'll be checkboxes, and the checkboxes are based on the most common summarized responses that we've seen after years and years of reviewing the plans. And I know what you're thinking. I'm a snowflake, I'm special, how dare you, Leah, you cannot be using to a checkbox. And I agree, I can never even imagine reducing any grantee to a checkbox. So, for every question where there are checkboxes, we are trying to make it easy for you and just to check it off. If the checkboxes aren't doing it for you, or if there's not enough explanation in the checkboxes, if you want to explain further, if you want to write in a few caveats, a lot of grantees write things like, we'll do this if we have enough funding, but until we get the funding, we're not really sure. So all those questions will always have one at the end that says other describe, and there'll be a text box, and you'll describe. And every time you click other, you have to write something in the describe field. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it so that the system could read what you say, and so it won't kick it back if all you say is, haha, Yulia, I'm typing nothing in here. But we'll catch that on the back end. But you will have to write something in the text box if you click on other. So, if you don't like that, North Dakota's not here. So North Dakota, every year North Dakota submits a 120-page narrative plan, and since that's one of my grantees, I read it every year, and it's super fun. I love it. And so if you want to be North Dakota, which you can if you'd like, you can also attach an additional document. The end of every section is going to have like a line at the bottom that says something along the lines of, if you want to add more information, if what you've written doesn't suffice, if you ran out of space, click this button. And then you'll be able to attach a document just like, remember you had to attach the plan to the household report? It'll look just like that. You can attach a document. And you will be able to attach, I don't think there's a limit on the number of documents, but as you recall, there is a limit on the size of the document, so I would recommend attaching Word and Excel documents as opposed to, I'm so sorry, as opposed to PDF documents. So you'll have that opportunity at the end of every section, at the whole end of the plan. I don't want anyone to feel like I'm limiting their capacity to explain things to us. We like more explanation as opposed to less, even if we can't run a query on the explanation. We like learning about your programs. We prefer wordiness when we have time to read all the wordiness. So there are alternatives, and I'll show you what it looks like in a little bit in screenshots so that you are able to give as much explanation as you like. So this is an example of a section. This is the question on coordination. So the coordination question goes something like, explain how you coordinate LIHEAP with other programs. Well, if you've never written a LIHEAP plan before, you're like, what the hell do you mean about coordinate? I don't know what coordinate means. I don't know what other programs means. I'm going to write something. I hope they like it. I don't know. That's usually how it goes when you're new. And then as you get more experience, you write something. If we don't call you, that means we like it. If we call you, it means you have to change it. So you kind of figure it out. Well, now you get some check boxes, right? So you get a little bit of an explanation of what it is that we're looking for. Things like referral form. Things like a referral form or a joint application, or you have one-stop intake centers that do intake for multiple programs at the same time, all sorts of things like that. So you have some boxes, and then of course you have other describe, and then you can go crazy describing. So at the bottom you have this line right here, and it basically says, you know, attach something if you haven't had enough chance to describe, and then there's a little paper clip right here and it looks like the attachment button on your email. And that's what you click on to attach a document to this section. And so, of course, at the end of every section in OLDC, these buttons should look familiar, right? Everybody remembers these? There's one that says View Add Attachments. You can click on that button as well. I would prefer that you didn't, because if you click on the little paper clip, it connects the document to this particular section. So it makes my life easier, because you'll just write See Attachment. And then I'm going to have to figure out which attachments I need to see. So if you please make my life simple and click on the paper clip, I would appreciate it.
If more than one applies, can you check more than one?
You can always, and this is something, we're still in development mode. This will be something that is at the end of, going to be written at the end of every question. For all of these, almost I think except like one question in the whole plan, you can always click on everything. So our hope was that we provide you with enough canned responses to kind of cover most of the things you do. So usually there'll be more than 4 options. Usually there'll be like 8 or 10. And if the 8 or 10 or 4 don't suffice, then you click on Other, then you can do the attachments. But yes, you can always absolutely click on as many as you want. Okay, so this is another example. This is what the new program integrity questions look like. So the question, if you could read it, you should be recognizable. The question is about what systems do you have in place to prevent fraud and to report fraud. Remember that question? And then people tend to write like 5 paragraphs on fraud prevention. So we're trying to narrow that down. We want to know specifically what system you have in place for state employees to report fraud, what systems you have in place for your sub-grantees to report fraud, and there's another question below this one you can't see, which is what systems do you have in place for clients to report fraud. So again, really simple checkboxes, and then if the checkboxes aren't enough, you can click on Other. And then this section is longer, so you can't tell on the screenshot, but at the very bottom of it, there'll be that same little paperclip attachments thing you can click on again. So I'm hoping that even though we're adding questions, given that you'll be writing less narrative and more checkboxes, this will actually be saving you guys time. And it will make our data from all of you more analytical. We'll be able to analyze everyone's responses and draw conclusions across multiple states, across the whole country, across an entire region, so that you don't know this, but every year when we read your program integrity assessments right now, we have to put your responses into this giant spreadsheet where we have categories, and we put like 1s and 0s for yes and no, and the kinds of things that you do based on what you've written. And then we add up all the 1s and add up all the 0s, and we go, oh, okay, it looks like 17 out of 51 grantees do this. Well, now we won't have to do that, and you won't have to guess what 1 and 0 we're looking for. These are usually the things we're looking for. But again, and I'm going to keep saying this because I don't want anyone to feel like I'm trying to put anyone in a box. All of these are suggested responses. They're based on what we see as most common responses. They're not the end-all, be-all. We are eager to hear if you're doing something different. And if we start seeing enough something different, we'll add a checkbox to next year. We can do that. We have the technology. All right, so I want to talk about the describe boxes. There's 2 different kinds. The one at the top, when you see a box that has like the little bold button and the italics button where you can format things, then you know that in that box you don't have any word limits or character limits. You can type on forever. You can type it in a Word document, copy and paste it into that box. Or you can just keep typing in there and it'll just keep going down further and further. And you can put bullets. It's really fun. But if you see a box like this, without all these formatting buttons, if you just see this box, that means there's a 3,000 character limit. And a character is a word? No. A letter, a punctuation mark, or a space, right? So it's not 3,000 words, it's 3,000 characters. And I think Word has an option where you can count the number of characters for you. It's under word count. But so be cognizant of that. If you want to write a novel, don't write it in this box. Validate, when you click validate, it'll give you an error that says stop typing. And then you'll be mad because you'll have to summarize. Or you can just click the attachments button. Paperclip. Okay, so there's a new feature for this report in OLDC that you haven't seen yet. It doesn't appear in any of our other reports. And it's called Add a Row. So for those of you who leverage, and we're in the Northeast, most of you leverage, in your plan, you have to describe your leveraged resources, right? That you plan to leverage in the following fiscal year, that you might submit a report on the following November. So what that looks like, we don't know how many resources any one grantee wants to describe, and we didn't really want to just have a giant text box where you can type on forever. So what we did was we created, what you'll see is you'll just see this. You'll see this question, which the question is the same, and so it'll ask you to describe your resources. We didn't change the content of the question, we just reformatted it a little bit. So if you have one resource, you describe it, and if you have more than one, you go over here, you click this button that says add. You can click on this drop-down box if you want to add 5 or 10 rows at a go, and then click add. And once you do that, it'll add more rows for you. If you later decide that, oh my god, what am I doing? I should get rid of all these rows, these are awful, you go over here, you click on the little delete checkbox, you click the delete marked rows button. So this will appear in several places throughout the form anytime you kind of have to describe multiple concepts for the same question, and I don't know how many concepts you have. I think it may appear 3 or 4 times. So I want everyone to be kind of familiar with what this looks like so you're not confused when you see it on the plan, because when you'll see it, you'll just see one row, and it'll be like, oh my god, what do I do, what do I do? And you know, on August 31st, when all of you call me to ask how to do this, I'll say, remember the add a row feature? All right. Another new thing in the plan is the very last section. It's a section on required attachments. So we're doing this so we can limit the back and forth. There's not going to be any more you forgetting something, me having to call you back, you having to re-upload it into OLDC, me having to reject it, you having to unsubmit it. We're not doing that anymore. The validations built into the form won't let you submit if you're missing required things. Required things such as the governor's signature of the assurances. So you have, and I'll get to this, you have the option, get excited, to actually make your governor a user in OLDC and have him push the submit button, if you want. But if that seems like a really stupid idea, I mean, I got excited about it, but hey, I don't, you know, DC has no governor, so. Right. So, but you don't need to do that. You can print out the assurances. The assurances are a separate section of the form. You can print that section out. You can have them sign it, scan it, and upload it as a required attachment. The delegation letter, it's not your governor, but your boss's 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 boss. That's where you upload the delegation letter. We're now going to require that you upload your benefits matrix. The reason for this is you have no idea, unless I've called you, how many times we get random questions about what is the benefit for propane in Congressional District 73 in the state of, I don't know, Idaho. And of course, Idaho submitted an abbreviated plan that year. I don't have their benefits matrix. It's not on their website. I have to call them. They have to send it to me. I have to figure out what Congressional District 73 means. So, we will be asking you, please, 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 this will be required to upload the benefits matrix. And again, so OLDC is really smart, but it's not smart enough to read your attachments. You can, in theory, attach a document that's blank, and it'll let you pass through the validations. But then if that happens, we'll call you. We won't accept your plan. We won't mark it as complete until we get those matrices. They're really important to us. We're going to compare what you have in the actual matrix to your responses in the plan that ask about how you vary benefits to make sure that if you collect fuel type is on your benefits matrix, or if you collect varied by geography, which is one of the options, the different geographic regions are on your benefits matrix. There's a couple more. None of the certifications, please note, none of the certifications are up here. I'll show you why in a little bit.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So in Pennsylvania, our benefit charts are huge. We have 67 different counties, and could we send like the link to our website that goes to the to the benefit
absolutely.
charts?
You can you'll have to attach a document, like a Word document that says, Yulia, I don't want to attach 75 pages, go to this link.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as it's live and current. Like if I go to the link and it's last year's benefits matrix, then we might have a problem.
Okay.
But yeah, absolutely. Yes.
If we change our benefit matrix after we submit the plan, do we then have to resubmit a new plan, or can we just resubmit the change in the benefit matrix?
Well, so what'll happen, I'll get to this. I actually don't have a slide about it, but thank you for the question because I'm going to add a slide about it for the next training. You'll have to submit a plan amendment, and the way that's going to work in OLDC is it'll be a revision of the plan. But all you have to do is go into it and change the one attachment, and then just hit validate, certify, and submit again. But yeah, you won't. We won't be accepting emails. So everything about your plan will have to go through OLDC. OLDC will be the official record of what is going on in your state. So when we go on site visits and we need to find out what was in your plan for 2013, say, we'll be going to what you submitted through the household report as part of OLDC. And then, you know, maybe like a few years from now, if we need to know what was happening in 2014, we'll be going to this form. So any revisions as in amendments to your plan have to be done through OLDC, but it's not as though the whole thing is blank and you retype it all in. It's all in there. Change whatever you need to change, and then be nice to me and send me an email and tell me what you changed so I don't have to look through like 100 pages to figure out and compare, because it won't tell me. Not this year. I'm working on that for next year, but right now it won't tell me what you changed. So if you get to that, it'll be really nice. You can also send an email to your liaison and tell us, we're going to change this. I just sent a new submission in OLDC, go check it out. Okay, so more things to get excited about. I already talked about the governor thing. I mean, I got excited, but I realized it's not everybody's thing. So, and who knows, some governors, they may not know how to use a computer, I don't know. So, but that is an option, you can do it. You can set up a user who just certifies. So basically they just are the signator. They have no ability to change anything. They can look at it all, obviously, but they only have the ability to certify or certify and submit. If that works for you, great. If it doesn't, you know, you don't have to. The other things that I wanted to talk about a little bit are the validations. So when you do the household report, the grantee survey in OLDC now, we have some validations built in. So if row 5 doesn't add up to rows 3 plus 4, we go, there's a problem here. And we don't let you submit. So similar validations will be throughout the sections of the plan. And there'll be like things like, this question is required, you didn't check any of the boxes, check the box. Or you wrote in section 2 that you're dedicating 15% for cooling, but you skipped the whole section that describes your cooling program. Or, I'm trying to come up with others. You clicked other in one of the questions, not any of the other checkboxes, but you didn't provide any kind of description in the please describe box. So the validations are designed to kind of reduce the back and forth between us, so that by the time you submit the plan on September 1, we can assume that all the little things have been taken care of. So we don't have to proof the plan for, did they check off this box, is the X right in this line? And you get these emails from us every September 5th through 20th, right? As we review all the plans and try to get them done before the end of the fiscal year, we have to go back and forth on, you forgot to check this off, this is required, you forgot this question. That all takes lots of time. So the validations are designed to get rid of that. The plan won't let you submit until you've met all of the minimum requirements. Now, our job comes in when we have to read what you wrote and make sure it's not total gibberish. So if you just wrote, I don't really care about this, Yulia, I'm just writing something so I can submit, we're going to read that and we're going to say, well, you have to write something that's intelligent, otherwise we can't complete your plan. So it has to be on topic. You can't just tell me how much you hate me or something. Not that any of you would ever do that. So there will be error messages, just like there are in the household report. The error messages will describe what we perceive to be the problem. I wrote all the error messages, so if the error messages are confusing, email me or email one of the liaisons. We should be able to explain to you what the problem is. But hopefully they'll be really clear and you won't be confused at all. So is New York here? Yes, New York's here. That's for you guys. The reason it's for you guys is because New York submitted comments for the first Federal Register notice on this plan. And New York had a couple really great suggestions that I'm still working with the developers to implement. So one of their suggestions, I wanted to show it to you guys today, but the programmers hadn't finished it yet. Normally in the plan, we ask you, what income guidelines do you use? 150% of the federal poverty level or 60% of the state median income? And so we programmed that into the form, and we made it like an either-or field. And New York's like, hey, Yulia, we use FPL for households 1 to 6 and state median income for households 7 and more. And I'm like, you're right. Other people do that too. So we changed that section of the plan, and it's going to be kind of like that add a row feature that I was showing you. So the first row comes up, and you can select like what household size, or you can select all household sizes. And then the next column, you can select federal poverty level or state median income. And the next column, you can type in 150 or 60 or whatever number applies to the threshold that you just picked. And if you have different thresholds for different household sizes, because depending on your state, 60% median income might be greater for larger households than the federal poverty level, you'll just have to go through and pick the household size and what income threshold applies to that household size. So it's really simple if you have just one for everybody, because you just select all households and you're done. But then like New York, South Dakota comes to mind. I can't remember, there's another state that does this, where you have split income guidelines. You'll now be able to put that into the form. So we're still working on making changes. It is a work in progress. And on that note, we are going to be doing a focus group of 9 grantees. The reason it's 9 and not 73 is because anything under 10 doesn't require OMB clearance. So Kay Jocelyn from NCAP, who runs our LIHEAP clearinghouse, will be getting in touch with some of you to ask you to participate as a focus group to test the plan. It'll be in like a development mode, so it won't impact your data, it won't have anything to do with the stuff you already have in OLDC, it'll be in a completely different system, it'll just look identical to what OLDC looks like. We're hoping to get that started in mid-April, so if Kay reaches out to you, please say yes, go do it. If you right now are sitting going, oh my god, I can't wait, I want to do this so much, you can email Kay and let her know. Sherry from NCAT is here. Sherry's right there in the second row. You can let her know if you have a particular interest. I can tell you now, New York, we're going to make you do it since you submitted comments. So there's an OMB Clearance Timeline. We're going to be publishing the next Federal Register notice very shortly. It'll be a 30-day notice. Any comments any of you have will go directly to the Office of Management and Budget. We hope to have that cleared and launched live in OLDC for you to start completing in June. Now I know that you all have timelines where you need to start your public hearings. You may need the form before June. I understand that. So there's a PDF version of the form available on our website. But a PDF version, you have to fill it out by hand, which no one wants to do. So if your timeline doesn't work with getting it in June, if you need it in May for your clearance process, if it takes your governor 4 months to review anything, you can email me. I can send you a Word version of more or less what it will look like in OLDC. It'll have all the check boxes, you can click on them. You know, it won't be perfect. It's a proxy. It's not exactly what you'll see in OLDC. There's a lot of programming that happens in it, you know, to make it look like it does in OLDC. But you will be able to fill it out in Word and answer the questions. So for the purposes of your public hearing, and for the purposes of review by your governor or whoever signs your plan, they'll see all the questions and your responses, even if you haven't had time to put it into OLDC.
Question.
Yes, and this was my last slide, so this is a good time. Question. I heard is that you back there? Yes.
Yeah. So you're anticipating that we would offer up that version for public comment?
No, you can offer up whatever version you want, but your version has to include all the content.
Okay.
And the content has changed. So if it's going to take you more than June, July, August to do the clearance, you need a copy of all the content. So you have the option of going on our website now and downloading a PDF version for public hearing, but you need to make sure that whatever you present in public hearing covers all the content that's in that version.
Okay.
Yes?
Timeout. Is that a concern?
I'm sorry, what timeout?
Yep.
So, yeah, okay. OLDC is a system designed not just for us, it's for the entire administration for children and families. And there are things in it that I can't change. One of them is the 30-minute timeout. So what that means is if you have OLDC up and you're doing something in it and then you get distracted and you're answering emails or you have a teleconference or you have to go somewhere or there's an emergency, there's a mudslide, I don't know. If you don't do anything on it for 30 minutes, it does time out. So there's two things you need to do about that. One is make sure you hit the save button. If it times out, you haven't hit save, you'll lose whatever it is that you put in there since the last time you hit the save button. Save is not the same as validate. When you click save, it just saves what you put in. It doesn't run the validations. But when you hit validate, it also saves. Does that make sense? Yeah, I understand it's a problem, but I cannot change that. That is a systemic thing. But yeah, it definitely is a concern. And if you're going to be one of those grantees that has multiple people completing different sections at different times, please make sure everybody knows about this, because the other thing that happens when it times out, if you don't log back in, you lock the form for anybody else to use. The only way you can unlock the form is to log back into it. So if you have a bunch of different hands in this one pot, everyone needs to be aware. Hit save. If you're gonna stop doing something in the form, hit end OLDC.
Julia, does it prompt you?
To what?
If you're in front of the computer, it'll prompt you.
Yeah, it'll say it's about to time out. Are you still working?
Okay.
Push OK. So if you're sitting there, it'll prompt you. But if you have a different program open and have the OLDC minimized, it won't pop up. And if you're not at your desk at all, then tough. Mike, is that a question?
1 minute.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
Is there a benefit of being beta testing?
My love and adoration. If you're new, if you're new, like you are, it would actually probably be even better for you to volunteer because you're not predisposed to what it was like before. So you won't just say, I don't like it because it's different from what I'm used to. Which, I mean, when you do something the same way every year since 1982, I'm not going to ask who's been doing it since 1982, it's not me. You get used to something, and then when it changes and it's a radical shift, I mean, this is a radical shift. You're going from typing stuff in a Word document to clicking on things on the internet. So it's totally different. It may be a little disconcerting. So it would be great to get the perspective of those people and people who haven't had a chance to do anything because they're kind of like a clean slate. So the time commitment for the testers, we're estimating it'll take about 2 hours to complete the plan. And granted, you don't have to like do it for real, right? You just have to kind of go through all the sections, click on stuff, and then there'll be a 30 to 45-minute interview with you when you're done with NCAT. And then NCAT will write us a little summary of what everybody said. So if you're new and you've never used OLDC and you've never filled out a plan at all, it might be worth it. It'll be like a nice dry run for you as well. And I mean, I think it might be useful for most of you because there are questions there that you haven't seen before. And if you see them now, you might start thinking about how you're going to answer them later.
But the Word version that we can get from you will
Yes.
fill that need too.
Yes,
right?
it will fill that need. Thank you for mentioning that.
Thank you, Ms. Rosales.
All right. And I'm now going to turn it over to Lauren.